Okay, so it's the end of turn 16, about 8 p.m, and the game and battle is over. Darkness is falling, and these are the final positions as that occurs. So in the north, there are incredibly heavy casualties on both sides here. So the French have been forced back to a line between Golis and just defending Leipzig there. Some French in the Birchwood as well. The Russians finally captured this town near the end there. Drombowski's Poles fell right at the end. And the Prussians couldn't capture Golis. Historically, Blucher's infantry were completely exhausted by this point, spent. Though, and forced to rely on their cavalry. Alan's kind of done it the other way around. The cavalry has been spent, and there's a few of the infantry still active. So the casualties here, meaning combat ineffective, out of ammo, exhausted, and so on. The Prussians and Russians have lost 14 of 29 units, whereas the French, both here and at Lindenau, have lost 14 of 23 units. So much damage inflicted. The 2nd Young Guard Corps have come across to reinforce Leipzig in this northern flank. And at Lindenau has fallen to the Austrians at great cost. The Baden troops are still holding the causeway to Leipzig. So over half the Allied casualties occurred in these northern and western sectors. Just very heavy casualties they were prepared to take. Over here, so Mervelt, eventually they managed to take Kleeberg. There's Mervelt's Austrians in there. Poniatowski fell, and the last of the Poles have retired back to Konowitz. The Austrian reserves have not been committed here, the Hungarians and Grenadiers, with lines of artillery here discouraging forward movement on either side. But in the centre, this was another very vicious battle between the Guard forces of both sides. See the Old Guard Grenadiers recaptured and held Wachau, and the Allied Guard and the last of Lauriston, the Guard Horse Artillery, have recaptured the Golgenberg Heights and holding that. And Liebert-Volkwitz, so the Russian elite 1st Guard Brigade was holding that, but was thrown out by the Young Guard, who in turn were thrown out by these Prussian Guard unit. And the Old Guard Chasseurs tried to recapture it, but were thrown back in much disorder and lost. Over on this flank, Clonau and MacDonald. Well, MacDonald has recaptured the Kolmberg there and pushed forward to try and threaten the flank of Liebert-Volkwitz. But casualties here have been rather light, so Clonau's only lost a single unit. And MacDonald 3 units, most of which were from Lauriston's corps, I believe, over here, around Liebert-Volkwitz. So the Russian and Prussian Guard and Grenadiers have lost 6 units. The French Imperial Guards, they've lost the Old Guard Chasseurs, 2 Young Guard units, and the Dutch Lancers. And the French are very thin on infantry in the centre now. losing I think about 12 units here, and same for the Allies. See here, first Guard Cavalry Corps and some of the French Guard Cavalry. Augereau. And seeing Young Guard Corps here holding the north and west. So, overall, the Allies have done a little better than they did historically, both in terms of positions they've captured, Leipzig, and also Lindenau over there. And they've inflicted somewhat heavier losses than they did historically as well. So, a French loss as it would have been historically. And there'd be various ways to assess that. Just the general state of things is enough though, I think. In terms of just playing the rules where we have a break point of about a third, that would mean the French have lost 34 and they needed 32 to reach the break point, whereas the Allies have lost 38 out of the 42 to reach their break point. So that would be another way of just having a number for a game, I guess. But we weren't really doing anything here other than just playing out the scenario and seeing what happened. So I'll do a blog post with a few more thoughts on this. And I'll just end with a thank you to the players. In the north we had Paul, who was Ney, and Alan, who was Volusia and York. And at Lindenau we had Mike, who was Gurley, and Chris, who was Schwarzenberg. And in the south was Constantine, Matt, and Kent, who was Clonow, who was facing Andy, who was McDonald, and over in the centre was Marat, who was Andrew. And lastly, I did not play myself, but I did take the role of Napoleon in terms of allocating the guard to the 3 French wing players as requests came in, and offering some advice of debatable wisdom, let's say. But I just enjoyed watching the spectacle, really, which is what one of these big Napoleonic games is all about. So, thank you for watching, and that is all for now.